I was interested in writing a play about love, really, and when I was commissioned to or invited to offer some pitches to the Everyman Playhouse, I did a couple. I gave them a couple of ideas, and this is the one that they were sparked by the most. So then I researched it a bit more and got more and more involved in the stories that I heard of the mothers whose sons have been damaged or killed in Iraq. So that's really what I did.
Well, Gemma talked to me about it right back at the very beginning when it was first commissioned, and I suppose one of the things that really interests me is that it's not just a play about the experience of families who, have sons in the war or who've lost sons in the war, but it seems to me a much bigger play that's really asking questions about a crisis, if you like, in the culture around masculinity and the roles of young men. And there is this sense of a kind of bankruptcy, if you like. In our central family, you have a father who used to work at the docks and then retrained as a carpenter, and you get this sense of first the docks closing and then all the industry. And the son's working as a doorman, standing, opening and closing the door at an expensive shop, wearing an Armani suit that he couldn't himself afford. And he says, look, nobody wants to make anything anymore. People just want to buy things. And, I think that feeling that for a young man, the only way of feeling that you have any respect, that the culture gives you any value is if you are, wearing expensive clothes. And as he says himself, there's no way of doing that legitimately. And I think for me, I was fascinated by that story, really, the feeling that for young men, perhaps the only way of feeling self-respect, feeling dignity, would be to join the army, that they don't have the kind of skills that previous generations might have had.
Well, the Everyman Playhouse put some adverts out and people contacted me and I had some sort of emailing, telephone conversation with people, and then myself and Suzanne Bell, the literary manager of the Everyman Playhouse, went to the peace camp in Manchester and spent 3 days with the women who were protesting in 2006, September, at the last Labour Party conference where Tony Blair was going to be Prime Minister. So it was then, really. Just reacting humanly to people and being honest with people. And because I spent 3 days with these women and with Unprotected, I built up a relationship with people over a period of time and got to know them. To accept that these are not just, I'm not just going to go in there, take the stories, run away, do the stories, and that's it. That I have to be true to them, respect them, and be there for them if they want to talk to me about anything. Because I've put myself on the line and I've expected them to put themselves on the line. So fair dues, really. So in terms of that, yeah, just being honest with people. And I found as well that with stories, with people whose voices are very rarely heard, when you if you're honest and you say, look, we're interested, this is an interesting thing that you have to say, you usually can't shut people up because they have a voice.
And I mean, in a way, that's what the play is about, isn't it? It's about women, ordinary working class women who would never normally go anywhere near a protest or a rally, and yet they find themselves through this experience of having sons in the war becoming politicised. And we watch the mother at the centre of this story go from being somebody whose whole world really is that domestic world and her family, and gradually that shifts, and the final image of the play is of her standing up in front of thousands of people and speaking. And that, it's a kind of irony in a way, isn't it, that this incredibly painful experience of losing a child takes her to this place where she kind of leaves the home and finds a voice. Well, I suppose one of the things that excited me when I first got the script was, as I said, because I felt that actually this was a big story, asking really big questions about the whole of the culture. And I felt that there are elements in the story that are very theatrical. And one of the things I really didn't know about and only discovered through reading the script was that these mothers now are often choosing to spend enormous amount of time watching 24-hour news and plugged into, with the whole internet connection, YouTube. It means that they have a kind of access to the war and to the experience of their sons that they never would have had in the past. And that, to me, felt immediately very interesting, very theatrical. And I think in Esther's very first draft that I read, there's a moment when the mother's watching the television and all of a sudden war breaks out all around her. And there are people running across the stage firing machine guns. And I thought there was something really fascinating about that idea, that here's this woman sitting in her living room in Liverpool, and yet her head is in a war zone, that she's actually kind of living in another place. And that's something very contemporary. I mean, even 5 years ago, we didn't have that kind of access to all that imagery. And so I felt there was a story that would really be could be told in a way that, as Esther just said earlier, actually not in this interview, in another one, starting to get, that it was really important that this shouldn't feel like kind of soap opera or kitchen sink drama. We wanted to kind of explode it, and in fact our living room sitting in the middle of a desert, and there's this huge sky, and I think that's what's so interesting about this story, that these women's lives both actually become the women in England who are all involved with military families against the war. Their lives start to, there's a connection between them, but also that they're kind of living an experience of their sons thousands of miles away, vicariously.
Extended pain.
Yes.
Because, years ago, like Polly says, if your son went away for months on end, then you would get the odd letter, whatever, they'd come back. But now it's just, they have, when somebody takes a hit, they take all the sort of satellite situations down. So you might know if it's in Basra, that's where your son is, oh my God, and you can't contact them until the families have been told. So you have a state of existence which I can't comprehend.
No.
That's extending the grief and the pain and the worry and the concern. You just go, what is that doing to us as a society? What is that going to do to our psyche, bringing all these fears and extending them?
I think the play's dealing with really interesting, a very interesting relationship to the whole reality of war that has shifted, I think, really significantly over the last 5 years. We have a very different kind of access to it. And in terms of our imagination, in terms of the imagery in our heads, for all of us actually, I think it's really changed.